Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look inside Next War Korea 2nd Edition. This is a game designed by Mitchell Land, and it is based on the system that was designed by Gene Billingsley. The first edition was out several years ago, and it rapidly sold out for the Next War series, and everybody has been waiting with anticipation for the reprint, and it is now available. So let's take a look at the back of the box and see what this game's all about. 60 years of tense, uneasy peace are shattered as a Korean peninsula erupts in renewed warfare. One historically, ethnically, and culturally homogenous people, polarized and separated by superpower politics and economics, hurl men, weapons, and material into the maelstrom of modern combat in an attempt to settle their arbitrary division once and for all. From Pyongyang in North Korea to Busan in the south, the war rages. In a scene reminiscent of the first attack by the Inmin gun in 1950, the North Korean People's Army surges across the demilitarized zone and penetrates deep into South Korea. Special Operations Forces from both sides conduct raids, interdiction, and reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines, while airborne, air assault, and amphibious forces strike far behind those lines, attempting to outflank the main army forces of both sides. In the air, a heated campaign roils in an effort to establish superiority in the skies over Korea. With tough terrain and the full ferocity of modern armor, air mobile, airborne, and marine warfighting capabilities, there is no safe haven in the lethal cauldron of battle engulfing the Korean peninsula. While North and South battle for a quick, decisive victory, the world awaits the response of the two military superpowers in the region, the United States of America and the People's Republic of China. Will the United States, stung by the high casualties among the soldiers of its 2nd Infantry Division during the initial assaults, be able to reinforce the South quickly enough? And if so, how and in what strength? Will the Communist Chinese support the North and intervene, thus widening the conflict? As the situation evolves, choices are made, forces are committed, and the future of the two Koreas hangs in the balance. And that is an example of the map. There are the counters down here at the bottom. It is rated as a 7 on the Solitaire Suitability Scale. The basic game is set rated as a 5, and the advanced game is rated as an 8 as far as complexity goes. Game contents: you get a standard and advanced rulebook, game-specific rulebook, over 1,000 9/16" counters, 2 22 by 34" map sheets, 10 player aids, and 1 10-sided dice. It is a division, brigade, regiment, battalion, unit scale. Each turn is 3.5 days, and the map is 7.5 miles per hex. So let's take a look inside and see what you get. And inside we have our game-specific rules, standard and advanced series rules, our maps, several counter sheets, player aids, baggies, and our dice. So let's set up the map and take a closer look at the game. And here's a look at the two maps that come with the game. We're going to look at each one individually. This is the North Korean section. You see here the DMZ stretching across the map, and you go into North Korea as far north as Pyongyang. Don't need to add in the rest of North Korea because there's a good bit of North Korea not on this map, but for game purposes, the attack is from the north into the south, which is why predominantly the most of the map is the South Korea. But when you push back into north, really all you need to do, your big target's going to be Pyongyang. And on the continuation side of the South Korea map, we have the southern end of Seoul. The majority of Seoul is down at the bottom of the North Korea map, which we were just looking at, but it goes all the way as far south as Jeongyup over to Pohang on the eastern side. On the top left, we have our submarine threat ASW level, naval detection, the South Korea air defense track, and the victory point table on the left-hand side, which will give you all the tables you'll need to play the game. Now we'll take a look at the player aid cards. This is the standard game sequence of play, listing all the steps in the standard game, as well as the case numbers of any rules that you may need to reference. On the back of that is the advanced game air defense resolution chart. Then we have the standard and advanced game tables. On the back we have standard game air defense fire chart and the standard game air points chart. The strike effects table. On the back of that is the master allied reinforcement chart. Then we have the advanced sequence of play card, and as you can see, there is a lot more steps here for the advanced game than there are in the standard game sequence of play chart. And then we have the fold out for the advanced game tables, a lot of different tables and a lot of different options for you in the advanced game. Then we get to the terrain effects chart. This lists the type of terrain, what it looks like on the map, your combat effects to the different units in the game, and then you have movement costs or prohibitions for leg, light infantry, motorized, and mechanized in all of these different types of terrain. Then on the back we have the combat results table, a listing of all the DRMs, the column shifts, standard combat strength modifiers, your combat results key, and then the excess combat losses and how those are handled, as well as the DRM track. You will be using this quite a bit as you're figuring out your DRMs up and down throughout the course of the combat. Then we have the Air Superiority Missions card, which is used to keep track of all air units and missions for both sides of the game. And lastly, we get to the game information display, which has your general records track used to track your victory points, as well as which turn you're in, special forces missions for both sides, and surrendered units in the middle. Now we'll take a look at the 6 counter sheets that come with the game. On the left-hand side, you have the light blue units. These are ROC units. The maroon units are DPRK, U.S. Army, U.S. Marines, and then Air Forces. DPRK air units, as well as some admin counters for the ROC forces. More admin counters, general admin counters for the game. We have some Japanese, Canadian, and Chinese forces. And lastly, Russian forces and more admin counters for DPRK, the US, and game general states. And we'll take a look at the rulebook. It is a 44-page rulebook. The standard rules go from page 2 to 21, and the advanced rules go from 22 to 44. So this rulebook is going to be standard across all games in the system. Game-specific rules themselves will differentiate each game individually. Unit identification charts, sample units, and combat unit identifications, how to read all your counters. Introduction, you have your glossary of all the abbreviations, components. Then we get into the standard sequence play explanation, and then weather, initiative, air power, air superiority, and helicopters, how they're used, how you do your air defense fire, resolving ADF, sea control, and naval rules. All the different types of naval units, submarine threat level, changing the levels, mine laying and how to clear those, movement, ZOC effects, extent of ZOCs, light infantry and ZOCs, terrain and how that affects the game, the road network, prohibited terrain. Then we get into clearing operations, and this explains how that is handled. You don't just walk into a city and take it over. You actually have to clear it, and that is done through a chit draw. So you never know exactly what you're going to be facing inside the city, which I really like. It gives you that fog of war, which you're going to have in an urban environment. Explains how that's all handled, and then you get into your air transport, naval movement, amphibious assaults, marine, air mobile movement. Then we get into beachheads and then combat eligibility, determining odds ratios, all the modifiers and how that's all handled, your column shifts, die roll modifiers, and then combat results, how retreats are handled, reinforcements, replacements, victory, and then some optional rules, including a fog of war rule down here. Then we get into the advanced series rules on page 22. Gives you the advanced game components, explanation of the different unit values, advanced movement rules, advanced naval rules. You have naval surface combat, naval or strategic displays, headquarters combat capabilities. Now your headquarters are really going to have more of a factor in the game. Supply, how the supply points are handled, effects of being marked as out of supply, emergency resupply, isolation, special operations forces and how those are used for different things like raids, reconnaissance, targeting, detection, air power, and your air superiority, air-to-ground missions, resolving strike missions, hardened targets, interdiction results, air defenses, air mobile movement transport, interceptor combat, movement and transport theater weapons, hits and damage, the different types of effects on ground units from different strikes, attack helicopters, air units, beachheads, ports, detection, SAM, AAA tracks, air defense tracks, reconstitution, recovery, air unit and helicopter replacements, bridge repairs, UN resolutions, advanced rules, alternate play, and then we have the index on the next 2 pages, and then the nationality identification chart, which is standard throughout the series on the back of the book. And next we'll take a look at the game-specific rules for Next War Korea. This is a 28-page rule book, and this is in addition to the series rules, which are standard across all games in the system. Each will also have its own specific rule set. It is a mix of standard and advanced game rules, so you'll need to look for the advanced game notification under each of the rules to know if it's used in the advanced game or not. Each game will have its own GSR specific to that theater. Introduction, terrain. This explains different pieces of the terrain that are specific to this map. Combat outposts, all-water hex-side bridges, lines of communication, tunnels. Along the DMZ, there are some tunnels which give the DPRK an advantage when they are coming across in the initial assault. Beaches and amphibious assaults. DPRK sniper brigades. U.S. Marines, and this is what I was talking about with the advanced rules. There is an advanced rule notification here. This is only used in the advanced rule set. You have Marine task forces and then the MEF force composition. Then we get to the advanced rules for the U.S. Army Brigade combat teams, naval air units, airborne units, weather, movement, air transport limitations, sea transport limitations, air mobile points and air mobile movement, off-map boxes and movement. Then we get into combat, chemical weapons support. In this game, only the DPRK can initiate chemical weapons attacks. The allied unit can respond with chemical weapons in kind, but it can only be initiated by the DPRK. Chemical facilities, movement, reinforcements for standard and advanced. ROC, reserve HQs, DPRK reinforcements and reserves, Japanese ground forces, air mobile points, advanced game, air unit reinforcements, weather effects, air unit and helicopter replacements, subordination, targeting, electronic detection, air power, air basing limitations, rebasing, Japanese air restrictions, hardened targets, theater warfare assets. You have U.S., Russian, Chinese cruise missiles, DPRK Scuds, UN resolution veto, and then you have optional rules for different units that could be used, air cushion vehicles, naval F-35s, ROC F-35s, ROC AH-64, security leaks, Marine Corps Wild Weasels, close air support restrictions, DPRK nuclear strikes, refugees, U.S. readiness, and then lack of runways, PRC carrier air units, Army BCT arrival, the last gasp, optional weather rules, and then scenarios start on page 14. There are two types of scenarios in these games, standard and advanced. Standard uses standard rules, advanced uses the advanced rules. Starting here with the standard game rules, Soul Train, Yuzhong Blues, East Coast Highway, Incheon again, Militarized Zone, All In, and then They Did What? And then we start in the advanced scenarios on page 20 with Strategic Surprise, Tactical Surprise, Extended Build-Up Scenario. And I think that is it for the advanced rules, advanced scenarios. Then you get to your second edition design notes, order of battle notes, credits, and then on the back you have your strike effects table on the back of the book. And that is a look at everything you get inside of Next War Korea 2nd Edition, a game designed by Mitchell Land and published by GMT Games. If you're into modern what-if scenarios, the Next War series is the go-to series for you. Definitely pick up any of the games in the series, the theater that interests you most, or pick all of them up. Next War Vietnam is due out sometime this year, hopefully by the end of the year, maybe not until 21, but hopefully it will be this year. Couple notes here on the 2nd edition. Number one is this game box is much thicker now. This is not like it was for the 1st edition where you had that thinner MBT style box, that thin cardboard. Now it's really thick, heavy cardboard box. So hopefully if this is the way of things in the future for the Next War series, there may be a box upgrade option because I'd love to upgrade my boxes for the other games in the series. The other mention is these counters are much thicker, not the white core we had in the other versions of the game, but now this is more pretty much like the Silver Bayonet games or any of the newer games that are coming out from GMT. That same easy punch counter that you're going to have to watch out for putting your finger through when you take them out of the box. But I actually prefer the white core. It's easier to clip, and they're thinner counters, easier to manipulate on the map. But these are still great counters, and I'm glad to see that GMT is upgrading each of their games as they come out in new iterations. But definitely a great system if you're into modern conflicts and gaming out what could potentially happen in the future. Look no further than the Next War series. Well, I hope that helps you guys out if you've been curious about this one. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.